Rain had come to the high desert. Quiet, patient, the kind that slips into dust and softens it, the kind that makes a town hold its breath. June Doyle stood on the church steps and watched the street turn to dark clay. Her father's badge lay in her palm. It felt heavier than it should. The funeral was over. Voices had faded. Lanterns flickered behind wet windows. She could still smell the smoke from the black crepe on the doorway. Sheriff Abram Doyle was gone. A name would have to replace his. No one said the name out loud. Not yet. Not while the rain kept its steady hush. June closed her fingers over the badge and pressed it to her chest. The metal was cold. Her throat ached. She kept her face still, because that was what her father had taught her. Feel it later. Stand up now. A rider moved through the rain at the far end of the street, a dark shape against darker sky. The horse stepped careful and sure. The man did not look toward the church. He wore a low hat, a long coat that shed water in thin streams. He passed the mercantile. He passed the smithy. He paused at the hitch rail in front of the half-lit saloon, then kept going. June watched him, because the town watched him. Eyes followed in silence behind glass. There was a feeling in the rain, a small shiver under the skin. She tucked the badge into her pocket. She took the steps slow. The mud took her boots and let them go. At the foot of the steps, she stopped. The man had reached the far edge of town where the cottonwoods bent. He lifted his head then, a fraction, as if he had felt her looking. She could not see his face. She felt the pull anyway, a thread. It startled her. She breathed and looked away. Inside the church, the last candle sputtered. She went back and cupped her hand around it. The flame steadied. Her father's hat rested on the front pew. She picked it up. The brim still held his shape. She placed it in the wooden chest with his Bible and the letters he had never sent. Her fingers traced the worn leather of the hatband. The rain turned stronger on the roof. After a time, she closed the chest and locked it. Old wood creaked. The sound felt like a sigh. A door opened behind her. Soft. She turned. Deputy Milo Hart stood in the aisle with his hat in his hands. He was young and kind and not ready. "The council meets at dawn," he said. "They want you there." "Me," she said. "You know the files, trails, names, where your father kept his notes. They need you to read the room." June nodded. Read the room, meaning read the fear, measure it, set it down where it could not stampede. Her father had been good at that. He had steadied men by standing still. Milo's voice fell low. "There is talk of the man who rode through. Folks say it is Rowan Cade." The name moved like a small wind across her skin. Outlaw. Cards and quietness. A gun that spoke only when it had to. Trails that began with a rumor and ended with a shadow. June had heard the stories since she was a child. The stories had changed as she grew older. Some were about danger. Some were about a strange mercy. None were simple. "Did you see his face?" she asked. "No," Milo said. "But the horse, a blue roan with a white star low on the brow, that is his horse. They say he came for the storm, to pass through and be gone." June felt that thread again. It pulled somewhere under the sternum. Not pain, not quite comfort. Something like recognition without reason. She turned and blew out the candle. The church fell into the hush of rain and wood. When they stepped outside, the town smelled like wet iron and sage. They parted at the crossroads. She walked toward the house on the rise. Her father had built it with a handful of friends on a winter that never seemed to end. Floorboards spoke under her boots. She placed her coat on the peg and lit a small lamp. Shadows leaned and slowed. On the kitchen table lay a folded map, still marked with her father's hand. Trails like veins, names like thorns. She touched the place where the canyon narrowed and the creek twisted back on itself. He had told her once that the land kept its own counsel. If you listened, it told you where men would make their mistakes. She made tea and sat with the map. The lamp hummed. The house held its quiet. The rain softened again. Her pulse eased. Loss had layers. The first was sound, then light, then habit. She waited for the next layer to arrive. A soft knock came at the door. Her hand froze over the cup. 3 slow raps. Not urgent, not polite either. She set the teacup down and stood. Her palm brushed the badge in her pocket. She did not put it on. She went to the door and lifted the latch. A man stood on the porch, hat low, coat dark with rain. Close, his presence felt like the hush before a fire catches. The lamp behind her painted his cheekbone and jaw. Water ran from the brim of his hat in 2 clean lines. His eyes were quiet and watchful. "I am sorry for your loss," he said. His voice was low and roughened by road dust. Careful, like he did not want to break the air between them. June studied him. The horse at the rail shifted and blew. The white star on its brow glinted. "Rowan Cade," she said. He did not flinch. "I can stand here in the rain, or I can speak on your threshold. Your choice, Miss Doyle." Her heart tapped once in the space between words. She moved aside. He stepped in without sound. The house seemed smaller with him in it, not because of size, because of the space he did not take. He removed his hat and held it by the crown. His hair was dark with the weather. His eyes were a color the lamplight could not name. "What do you want?" she said. "To pay a debt," he said. "And to warn you." She waited. "Your father once let a man live who should have been dead," Rowan said. "That man did not deserve it. I did not say anything then. The man was my brother." Silence thickened. June did not breathe for a count of 3. The rain filled the gap and then emptied it. "He is coming here," Rowan said. "He thinks this town took something from him. He says he will take it back. He is a foolish man who wears danger like a coat he never learned to mend." "Why tell me?" she asked. Rowan looked at the map on the table, the marks, the creek, the canyon. His gaze returned to her with the weight of a calm river. "Because a kindness is a debt that does not vanish. Because you are your father's blood. Because I do not like the sound of a house falling silent." Her throat tightened. Compassion cut sharper than pity. It reached the deep place where loss had just opened. She found herself wanting to sit. She did not sit. "Who is he?" she asked. "Gabe Cade," Rowan said. "He will come by the ridge when the river lets him. He has friends who think they are wolves. They are not, but enough teeth can still draw blood." Milo had said dawn, the council, names, and fear. June touched the badge again and felt the cold steadiness of it. She looked at Rowan and saw weariness and a strength that did not perform. She felt how close they stood. She heard her own breath, and his, and the rain. The world narrowed to a small room where two lives had arrived by long roads. But then she whispered, "You could have stayed away." "I tried," he said. "I passed through without stopping. Your lamp was a river seen from far off. It said there were questions that rain could not quiet." He looked at the hat on the peg. He looked at her hands. His gaze did not slide. It settled and warmed. Something in her chest softened and rose like bread by a hearth. It frightened her. It comforted her. She folded her arms to keep it from showing. "Oh, what do you need from me?" she asked. "Listen," he said. "Tomorrow the town will speak with the same mouth it uses for fear. Judge what it says by the sound of it, not the words. And if you let me, I will ride the ridge before dawn and read what the rain wrote in the sand." She stood very still. Trust has a shape. It looks like a hand extended and a pause that lets you see it. She knew this from her father. She felt it now from a man the town named Outlaw. The turning point was small. It was the nod she gave. It was the space she made for him at the table. It was the way the house seemed to breathe again when he sat across from her and unfolded the map with careful fingers. He traced the creek with the edge of his hand. He waited for her to look. When she did, the distance between their breaths shortened. "Stay till the rain eases," she said. "Then ride." He inclined his head. The lamplight drew a thin gold line along his cheek. The rain slowed and held. Night moved closer to the windows. Somewhere a coyote called and was answered by silence. If this quiet has found you, hold it a little longer. If your heart knows the ache of a house learning a new sound, stay close. The night still has more to say, and the next step waits at the saloon door. The rain stopped before dawn, leaving the air heavy with scent, wet wood, horses, and smoke. June stood by the window, her shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders. The horizon was still dark, but the kind that promised light. In the faint glow, she saw Rowan Cade saddling his horse outside her porch. His movements were quiet, deliberate, the kind of grace that came from years of surviving alone. He didn't glance back toward the house, yet she knew he was aware of her watching. He had that stillness of a man who always knew where the danger was, and where the tenderness waited. When she stepped outside, the chill met her skin like a test. Rowan looked up, eyes dark beneath the brim of his hat. "You ride early," she said. "The ground keeps secrets better before the sun wakes it," he answered, tightening the saddle cinch. "You think your brother will come?" "I know he will." His voice held no doubt, only time. "And he won't come alone." She swallowed. "Then what good will one man do against a pack?" He straightened, met her gaze. "Sometimes one quiet man is the noise that stops them." There was something about the way he said it. Calm, unhurried, almost tired. The kind of weariness that didn't come from age, but from seeing too much. June folded her arms. "You don't owe this town anything. You don't owe me." "I owe your father," he said. "He spared a Cade when he didn't have to." I aim to see that debt ends with me, not with you." The horse shifted. The leather creaked. Somewhere a crow broke the silence with one sharp cry. Rowan touched the brim of his hat. "Stay close to the council. Tell them nothing until I return. Trust only what you feel, not what you hear." June's jaw tightened. "You speak like a man who doesn't plan to ride back." He almost smiled. "Maybe I just don't plan to die in front of an audience." And before she could find a reply, he swung into the saddle and rode out, his figure swallowed by mist and cottonwood shadow. The road beyond the ridge curved into a world she couldn't see, and for a reason she couldn't name, her heart followed that sound of hooves until it faded. By sunrise, the town was awake and uneasy. The storm had stripped signs and loosened nails, leaving the streets bare as bones. Inside the council hall, the men sat close, voices low. Deputy Milo Hart nodded to her as she entered, his eyes darting toward the empty chair at the head of the table, her father's old seat, the one no one had dared to fill yet. "Miss Doyle," said Mayor Burrows, a thick man with sweat already glistening on his temples. "We appreciate your help this morning. You were close to the sheriff. You know the way he thought." June sat, hands folded, her face calm though her stomach coiled. "What's the matter?" she asked. The mayor exchanged glances with the others. A rider was seen near the ridge before dawn. No one recognized him, but the tracks— "Blue roan," June said quietly. They stared. "How do you—" "Because he came to my door last night," she said. Gasps flickered through the room. "You let him in?" Burrows snapped. "He wasn't there to harm me." "Miss Doyle, Rowan Cade is a wanted man," the mayor said, slamming a fist on the table. "Your father would have put him in irons." She leaned forward, voice steady. "My father would have listened first." The room fell still. Rainwater dripped from the roof outside, a steady count that seemed to underline every heartbeat. "Did he threaten you?" Milo asked gently. "No. He came with a warning." "What kind of warning?" She hesitated. The image of Rowan's eyes came to her, not dangerous, but burdened. "He said someone is coming, someone who has reason to hurt this town." A murmur spread. The mayor's voice turned sharp. "And we're supposed to believe an outlaw's prophecy?" "Believe what you want," June said. "But when trouble rides in, I'll be the one standing ready, not talking circles in this room." She rose before anyone could stop her. The wooden floor groaned under her boots. Outside, the sun was finally breaking through the clouds, slicing the street in lines of gold and shadow. Milo caught up with her on the porch. "June," he said softly, "you sure you can trust him?" "I don't," she said, then looked toward the distant ridge. "But I believe he means what he says. That's different." Rowan rode through the canyon where the rain had carved thin veins through the red earth. His coat brushed the wet sage. Every sound seemed louder after the storm. The creek whispering, a hawk circling high, the groan of his saddle. He stopped where the land opened to a shallow basin. Fresh tracks cut across the mud. Heavy ones, 2 horses, then 4, then more. He dismounted and crouched. The sign told him a story. Riders who didn't care to hide their passing, yet moved like men who expected no challenge. His jaw tightened. Gabe was near. He touched the earth with his fingers. "You always did ride loud, brother," he muttered. When he stood again, he saw smoke far off. thin and grey, curling from the pines near the ridge. A campfire, not yet cold. He stepped back to his horse, feeling the pull of something inevitable. Rowan Cade was not a man built for prayer, but he found himself speaking softly anyway. "Let her stay safe, Abram. I'll do the rest." Back in town, June stood outside the church, watching townsfolk repair shutters and sweep mud. The world looked almost normal, and yet the air felt charged, as if the storm had left something behind. She turned when Milo called her name. "There's a rider coming down fast from the ridge." Her breath caught. For a heartbeat, she hoped it was him. But the figure that broke through the dust wasn't Rowan Cade. It was a stranger, lean and hard-eyed, with a smile that didn't belong in daylight. His coat carried the mark of the Cade family crest, sewn rough into the shoulder. He reined in his horse before the saloon, boots hitting the ground with a thud. "Morning, folks," he drawled, voice cold and dry. "Name's Gabe Cade. I'm here for what was stolen from my blood." The silence that followed was sharper than any gunshot. From the porch of the church, June's hand went to the badge in her pocket. It gleamed faintly under the sun. Her father's badge, her father's oath. And somewhere beyond the ridge, a horse thundered closer, as the outlaw who once swore to stay gone turned back toward the danger he had tried to leave behind. If your heart's been stirred by the hush before the storm, hold that breath a little longer. The next dawn will carry both fire and fate, and neither will leave untouched. Dust rose with the morning light, and fear came with it. Gabe Cade's arrival spread through town faster than wildfire on dry grass. By the time the clock above the saloon struck 8, every door was half shut, every curtain drawn. Even the dogs had gone quiet. June Doyle stood at the edge of Main Street, watching him, the man who looked like a shadow carved from Rowan's shape. He leaned against the hitch rail, lighting a cigar with the same ease most men used to say hello. The match flame caught his face. A younger version of Rowan's, but sharper, meaner, stripped of mercy. He took a long drag, exhaled smoke toward the sun. "Your town's smaller than I pictured," he said to no one in particular, but then again, so was the man who ran it. The words hit her like a slap. Her father's name didn't deserve that dust. She took a step forward, boots sinking into the soft mud. "Watch your tongue, Mr. Cade," she said, her voice carrying down the empty street. Gabe turned, slow as a man who had all the time in the world. "Ah, the sheriff's daughter. Heard you've got his eyes." "I've got his aim too," she said, hand resting on the revolver at her hip. He smiled. Not kind. "Then you'd best keep that finger steady, sweetheart. Ain't wise to shake when the stakes are family." The door of the saloon creaked behind him. A few rough-looking men stepped out, the kind who followed trouble for the promise of scraps. They fanned out just enough to show confidence. Milo Hart came running from the post office, breathless, hat in hand. "June, don't. I've got this," she said, never taking her eyes off Gabe. Now, Gabe said, stepping closer, the heel of his boot grinding the wet dirt. "I came here peaceful, believe it or not. Just want to talk about what was taken." "Nothing in this town belongs to you," she said. He tilted his head. "My father's land does. Land your dear daddy fenced off 10 years ago after the fire. Said it was abandoned. Said nobody left alive to claim it. But I'm alive, and I've come to collect." June's pulse quickened. Her father had never spoken of that land, the charred valley north of the ridge, just that some things were better left buried under ash. "You want land?" she said. "You talk to the council." "I ain't much for talking with cowards," Gabe said. "I'd rather talk with blood." He flicked the cigar into the mud and smiled again. "Yours'll do." Her gun cleared leather before the last word left his mouth. But before she could draw a breath, a rifle cracked from the ridge. The bullet shattered the whiskey sign above Gabe's head, raining splinters. The outlaws ducked for cover. Rowan Cade rode down through the smoke like judgment itself. His horse tore the ground, his duster whipping behind him. The townsfolk gasped, not just at the speed, but the certainty. He reined in between June and Gabe, boots sliding through the mud. His rifle stayed leveled at his brother. "You've had your say, Gabe," he called. "Now ride out before I make you part of this ground." Gabe laughed, slow and deep. "Look at you, brother, still wearing guilt like it fits. Don't make me wear blood instead." "You always were father's favorite," Gabe said. "He loved your silence. But me, I was the sound he couldn't bury." The two brothers stood facing each other, 10 yards of mud between them, and years of pain no gun could measure. The air trembled. June felt it in her bones, the storm that wasn't in the sky but in their eyes. "Rowan," she said softly, "don't." He didn't look back. His voice stayed calm, almost gentle. "Get inside, June. I'm not leaving you here." "You don't have to leave," he said. "Just don't give him reason to hurt what's good." Her throat tightened. "And what's that?" He finally looked at her. The corner of his mouth softened. "You." Gabe's smirk faltered for the first time. Well, well, the outlaws found himself a cause. "Ride, Gabe," Rowan said again, lowering the rifle just enough to make the choice seem fair, but Gabe only spat into the mud. "Next time, brother, I'll take what's mine, and what you're trying to protect." He swung onto his horse, his men following. The hooves pounded down the road, kicking mud and warning in equal measure. When they were gone, the town began to breathe again. June stepped closer. "He won't stop." "I know," Rowan said, eyes still fixed on the horizon. "That's why I have to." She studied him. The way the sun touched his jaw, the shadow of exhaustion under his eyes. "You can't carry this alone." He finally met her gaze. "You've got your father's courage, June. But courage without cover is just a target." He swung down from the saddle. "I'll stay close to the ridge. Watch their movement." "You'll need a place to rest," she said, before she could stop herself. His eyes softened. "You offering shelter to a wanted man?" "I'm offering sense," she said. "You can't outrun blood on an empty stomach." For the first time, he almost smiled. "Your father would have liked you, Miss Doyle." "He already did," she said quietly. "He just called it pride." Rowan's gaze lingered, long enough to feel like a promise unspoken. Then he nodded once. "I'll come by when the stars change." And before she could ask what that meant, he turned toward the ridge again. The sun caught the rifle across his back, flashing like lightning before fading into the dust. June stood there until the sound of his horse vanished. That night the wind came down from the canyon, cold and full of whispers. June sat at the kitchen table, the lamp burning low. She unfolded her father's old journal, the one he'd hidden beneath the floorboards, and found the page marked with a name she hadn't seen in years. Cade Valley, burned for mercy. Her hands trembled. Mercy. That word again. A knock came at the door. 3 slow raps. Just like before. Only this time she already knew whose shadow waited on the porch, and that what he carried wasn't just danger, but truth. If this story's drawn you into the hush between danger and longing, stay close to the firelight. The next night will burn hotter, and the secrets won't stay buried forever. The knock came again, low, patient, and heavy with rain still clinging to the air. June pressed her palms flat against the table, steadying her breath before she opened the door. Rowan Cade stood there in the half-dark, coat dusted with travel, the brim of his hat dripping from another ride through the night. Behind him, the moon was a dull coin buried in clouds. His jaw looked tighter, his eyes harder. "Didn't think you'd come back so soon," she said. "Didn't plan to," he answered, stepping inside. "Plans don't always keep." She shut the door. The wind rattled the shutters once, then gave up. The room settled around them. Rowan moved toward the table, every step slow, measured. He set his rifle down, then his hat. "He's got more men," he said. 6, maybe 8. They've made camp north of the ridge near the river bend. Gabe's drawing them in like wolves to a scent. June crossed her arms, heart quickening. "And you went alone to find that out?" He gave a faint, humorless smile. "I don't have a committee to argue with." She stared at the mud streaking his coat, the exhaustion in his eyes. "You could have been killed." "I'm still here," he said quietly, "but I won't be if they ride before dawn." He unfolded a crumpled map from his coat pocket, her father's map, the same one that used to lie on this table before Abram Doyle's death. Rowan smoothed it out with the back of his hand, his calloused fingers tracing lines she'd memorized since childhood. "Your father marked the ridge for a reason," Rowan said. "He knew that valley was more than burned ground." She frowned. "I found his note. It said, Cade Valley, burned for mercy." "What does that mean, Rowan?" He exhaled, slow. "It means your father once saved a man who shouldn't have been saved." Her pulse kicked. "Your brother?" Rowan nodded. "Gabe burned his own home with our family inside, claimed he was freeing them from this world's cruelty. My father buried what was left." "Abram Doyle came riding that same night and found me guarding the ashes. He could have turned me in for what Gabe did. Instead, he told the town the fire was accidental." June's throat tightened. "He lied to protect you." "He lied to protect peace," Rowan said. "He said there was no use punishing what guilt already punished." His gaze lifted to hers. "But peace doesn't last when the dead man's brother starts listening to ghosts again." She sank into the chair across from him, the truth cutting clean and cold. "So this isn't just revenge, it's unfinished mercy." He nodded. "And mercy always costs more the second time." The lamp hissed softly, its flame bending under a draught. Rowan's face shifted in the light, strong and worn, the lines of a man who'd carried too many graves inside him. "You could leave," she said quietly. "No one would blame you." His eyes met hers, dark and steady. "I've been leaving my whole life. I'm done with that." Silence stretched, thick and fragile. The air between them warmed, though neither moved. The lamplight painted gold on the edges of her hair. His gaze softened, and for the first time June saw something behind his quiet. A kind of ache that wasn't hunger or guilt, but the wish to rest. She reached out and brushed the back of his hand. The touch was light, accidental, yet it broke the air like thunder breaks still water. His fingers flexed beneath hers, rough, steady, alive. "You don't have to carry this alone," she whispered. Rowan didn't pull away. "I know," he said, "but I also know what happens to folks who stand near me. Maybe I don't scare easy." A small smile ghosted his lips. "Then you're more your father's daughter than you know." The lamp flickered again, shadows dancing on the walls. Somewhere outside, a coyote howled, distant but near enough to stir memory. Rowan stood slowly. "They'll move by sunrise," he said. "Gabe never could wait long when his anger started talking." June rose too. "Then we'll meet them." "We?" His voice dropped lower. "I know this land better than anyone," she said. "Every ridge, every dry creek, every sound the wind makes before it changes. You'll need that if you're going to stop him." He studied her face, the defiance, the fire that didn't blink. Then he nodded once. "All right, but you ride behind me." She smirked. "You'll be lucky if I let you keep up." For the first time, his laugh came, quiet and real, like something he'd forgotten how to do. It eased the room, made the night seem less cruel. "Then we ride before dawn," he said. She stepped closer, close enough that the air carried his scent, rain, smoke, and wild sage. "Rowan," she said softly, "if this goes wrong—" "It already did," he said, voice rough. "We're just trying to make it mean something now." Her heart stumbled in her chest. She wanted to say something, anything to slow the ache that had begun between them, but he was already moving to the door. "Get some rest," he said. "We'll need all the daylight we can steal." He opened the door. The moonlight spilled across the threshold, cold and silver. He stepped out into it, the night swallowing his shape until only his voice lingered. "June," he called back, quiet but certain. "If you hear thunder before morning, it won't be the sky." She stood there long after the door shut, the echo of his words weaving into her breath. Outside, the clouds gathered again, thick and heavy. Inside, the air carried the warmth of his touch still lingering on her skin. And for the first time since her father's death, June Doyle was no longer afraid of the dawn. If this night has wrapped you in its hush, stay near the firelight. The storm ahead will test every promise, and some hearts will not ride through unchanged. Dawn crept over the desert like a slow confession. The first light touched the hills and bled into the dry creek beds, turning every grain of dust into faint gold. June Doyle was already outside, tightening the saddle on her father's old bay mare. The horse shifted under her hands, restless, as if it could smell what waited beyond the ridge. Rowan Cade stood a few feet away, his back to her, loading the rifle with calm precision. His movements were quiet, but not gentle. The kind of quiet that comes from a man counting seconds he can't afford to waste. "You sleep at all?" she asked. He slid a cartridge into the chamber. "Didn't seem right, with the storm riding so close." June tightened the last strap and swung into the saddle. "Then it's a good thing I slept enough for both of us." He glanced up. "You always talk this much before trouble?" "Only when I plan on outliving it," she said, smiling despite the knot in her stomach. That almost drew a grin from him, but it didn't reach his eyes. He swung onto his horse, the blue roan shifting its weight, ready. They rode out together, hooves whispering against the soft earth, breath rising like smoke in the morning chill. The ridge opened before them, a sweep of jagged stone and sagebrush, the kind of land where secrets stayed buried. From up high the valley stretched wide and grey, scarred with the ashes of the fire that had once consumed it. Cade Valley. June drew in a breath. This is where it happened. Rowan nodded, eyes fixed on the basin below. That night burned more than timber. It burned sense right out of Gabe. He thought killing our kin would set them free from the cruelty of the world. Her voice was quiet. And you've been carrying it ever since. He looked at her then, really looked, the wind lifting his hair, the dawn reflecting in his eyes. Some debts don't belong to the man who owes them. They belong to the one who can still make them mean something. They dismounted and tied the horses among the rocks. The campfire smoke rose from below, thin, grey and fresh. Gabe's men were awake. Rowan crouched low, studying the scene through a gap in the stones. 6 riders, maybe 7. Gabe's horses tethered near the bend. June knelt beside him, close enough to feel his shoulder brush hers. "What's the plan?" He handed her a small revolver. "You stay here." She took it without hesitation. "And if they find me?" "Then you shoot straight." His tone was even, but his eyes betrayed it. Something rawer, quieter, like the fear of losing one more thing he didn't mean to care for. "And you?" she asked. "I draw them out," he said. "Gabe won't resist talking before shooting. He never could." She touched his arm. "You don't have to face him alone." His jaw tightened. "I do. He's my blood, my burden." June shook her head. "No, he's your ghost. The difference is, you're still alive." He didn't answer. For a heartbeat, they simply breathed, 2 souls caught between duty and something deeper. Then Rowan stood, pulling his hat low, and started down the slope. The camp stirred as he approached. The outlaws turned from the fire, hands drifting toward their guns. Gabe Cade rose from a stump, his smile sharp and lazy. "Well," he drawled, "if it ain't the ghost I buried." Rowan stopped a dozen paces away. "You buried nothing, Gabe. You just ran faster than your conscience." "Conscience?" Gabe laughed, a sound like gravel. "You're still using that word. Out here, men like us survive by truth. And the truth is, Father's mercy made you weak." Rowan's fingers brushed the edge of his gun belt. "Father's mercy saved you once. I'm here to see it doesn't damn anyone else." The other men shifted, nervous. Even they could feel the air thinning. Gabe's grin faded. "Still preaching, huh?" he said. "Tell me, brother, you think that girl of the sheriff's sees you as a savior or just another story she'll cry over?" Rowan's jaw flexed, but his voice stayed level. "Say her name again, and I'll make sure you never speak another." That was when Gabe drew, fast, too fast for thought. The gunshot cracked like lightning. Dust burst near Rowan's boots. Before the echo died, Rowan fired once. Gabe's hat spun into the dirt, a hole through its crown. The camp erupted. Guns flared. Shouts tore the stillness. Rowan dove behind a fallen log, reloading with steady hands. One outlaw fell. Another ran. The smell of gunpowder filled the air. From the ridge, June saw it all. Her breath came hard, hands trembling around the small revolver. Then she saw a man circling behind Rowan, silent, rifle raised. "Rowan!" she shouted, firing once. The shot hit true. The man fell backward into the dust. Rowan turned, eyes finding her on the ridge, surprise, relief, and something fierce flashing through him, but the distraction cost him. Gabe lunged from behind the log, knocking Rowan's rifle away. The brothers crashed into the dirt, fists and fury colliding. Years of pain poured into every strike. "Always thought you were better than me," Gabe snarled. "No," Rowan gritted, grappling for his knife. "Just never wanted to be worse." They rolled toward the fire, sparks scattering around them. Gabe drew a blade, slashing wild. Rowan caught his wrist, the two of them locked in a desperate silence, broken only by their ragged breaths. "End it," Gabe hissed. "Do what father should have done." Rowan's muscles strained, knife pressing close, but his hand trembled. "You're still my brother," Gabe spat blood. "Then you're still a fool." June was already running down the slope. Her boots hit the dirt beside them. "Rowan!" she cried. "Enough!" Both men froze at the sound. Gabe's eyes flicked toward her, and in that heartbeat, Rowan twisted, wrenching the blade free and hurling it aside. They fell apart, gasping. Gabe staggered to his feet, staring between them. His face was a ruin of dust and hate. So that's it. The outlaw and the sheriff's daughter. The whole damn world loves a pretty lie. He turned, stumbling toward his horse. "You can't save what's rotten, brother. And she can't save you." Rowan didn't stop him this time. He just stood there, chest heaving, eyes empty. When the sound of hooves faded into the canyon, June stepped forward and touched his arm. "You did right." He looked at her, voice rough. "I didn't finish what needed finishing." "Maybe that's the point," she said. "Mercy didn't die with your father. You kept it alive." For a long moment he said nothing. Then he let out a slow breath and nodded once. The fire crackled beside them, small against the rising wind. June's hand stayed on his arm until his shoulders eased. Above them the sky turned a deep, wounded red. A promise or a warning, she couldn't tell. If this story's fire has warmed your heart just a little, stay by the flame. The night ahead will bring choices that burn, and love that refuses to fade. The wind carried the smell of smoke long after the fire died. By dusk, the sky above Cade Valley was bruised violet and grey, the kind that pressed close and waited for thunder. Rowan and June rode side by side along the dry creek, their horses picking their way through the rocks. Neither spoke for a while. The quiet between them was too full. Finally, June broke it. "You let him go." Rowan's jaw flexed. "He's riding somewhere to lick his wounds. He'll come back meaner, but not tonight." That's not an answer. He didn't look at her. "I've killed enough of my blood for one lifetime." June's fingers tightened around the reins. "And how many more will he kill if you don't stop him?" Rowan slowed his horse, turning to face her. "You think I don't know what he's capable of? Every step he takes out there is one I've already walked. The difference is, I found a way back." Her voice softened. "Then let me walk it with you." He looked at her, long and quiet, the way a man studies something he doesn't deserve but can't look away from. "You don't know what that means," he said. "Maybe I do," she answered. "You just don't believe me yet." The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was a space between storms, heavy with what could be said but wasn't. They made camp near the edge of the ridge. The fire crackled low, throwing amber light across their faces. June wrapped herself in her father's old blanket, the smell of smoke and leather mixing with the night air. Rowan sat opposite her, sharpening a knife against a whetstone. The scrape of metal echoed steady, rhythmic. "You always this quiet?" she asked. He smirked slightly. "Noise don't make a man honest. Silence usually does." She watched him. "And what's your silence say right now?" He stopped sharpening, meeting her gaze. The firelight flickered across his face, deepening the shadows around his eyes. "That I don't know what to do with peace when it's sitting right in front of me." Her breath caught. "Then maybe you should stop fighting it." He laughed softly, low, tired, real. "You make it sound easy." "Maybe it is," she said, shifting closer. "Maybe you've just been running too long to notice." Rowan stared into the fire, his expression unreadable. "Running's all I've ever known." "Then stop," she whispered. He looked at her then, and the air seemed to change. The fire popped. The world went smaller. June could feel the weight of his gaze on her, steady, searching, almost afraid. She reached out and placed her hand on his, the one still holding the knife. Slowly, deliberately, he set the blade aside. Her voice trembled, but it didn't waver. "You don't have to be the man the world says you are, Rowan." He swallowed hard. "And what kind of man do you think I am?" "The kind who rides into danger to keep a promise. The kind who carries mercy in his hands even when it breaks him." He shook his head. "You see too much good where there ain't any left." "That's where it starts," she said, "seeing what's left." Something in him gave way then, something that had been holding tight for years. His shoulders eased, and the lines around his mouth softened. When he spoke again, his voice was low. "You remind me of him, your father. The way he looked at me that night, not like a criminal, like a man who'd already been punished enough." June's eyes glistened in the firelight. "He trusted you. He shouldn't have. But he did," she said. "And now I do too." The words hung between them, trembling in the heat. Rowan reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. His fingertips grazed her skin, light, almost hesitant, as if afraid she might disappear. "June," he murmured. She leaned closer, her voice barely a breath. "Don't think. Just stay." Their lips met, slow, searching, the kind of kiss that felt like both apology and promise. His hand cupped her face, hers rested against the side of his neck. For a moment the whole desert fell away. When they broke apart, the world felt new and dangerous. He whispered against her temple, "You don't know what this'll cost." She smiled faintly. "I've already paid it." He let out a long breath, forehead resting against hers. "You make a man forget what he came here to do." "Maybe you didn't come to fight," she said softly. "Maybe you came to remember how to live." He chuckled under his breath, the sound low and rough. "You talk like a preacher," she smirked. "Only difference is, I mean it." They sat close as the fire burned low, the silence no longer sharp, but full of warmth. Outside, thunder rolled far away, slow and deep. Rowan glanced toward the horizon. "Storm's coming again." June nodded, eyes still on the fire. "Let it come. We've got light enough to face it." He studied her profile, strong, calm, alive, and something inside him steadied for the first time in years. The night wrapped around them. Firelight flickered over their faces, and the wind carried a scent of rain and juniper. Rowan reached for her hand again, their fingers lacing naturally, like it had always been meant that way. And in the distance, a single gunshot echoed faintly across the valley, far enough to feel unreal, close enough to remind them the storm wasn't done. Rowan's eyes lifted toward the sound, then back to her. "Guess morning won't wait." She nodded slowly, holding his gaze. "Then neither will we. If this night's fire has lit something in you, don't let it fade. The storm's about to break, and when dawn comes, love will have to stand where mercy once did." The first thunder came just before sunrise, rolling low and steady through Cade Valley. The sky bruised itself into a heavy grey, and lightning licked the far ridge like a warning. Rowan was already awake, standing near the fire, staring into the horizon as the wind picked up dust. June stirred beside him, wrapped in her father's blanket, her hair undone from the night before. For a moment he let himself look, really look. She was the calm after every fight he'd ever lost. And that terrified him more than any bullet ever had. She blinked against the morning light. "You're up early." "Storm's moving faster than I thought." June sat up, rubbing her arms against the chill. "So's trouble?" He nodded. "Gabe's men are restless. That shot we heard last night wasn't a warning. It was a call. He's gathering more." June frowned. "Then we can't stay here." He turned to face her. "No, we can't." She stood, brushing dust from her skirt, her face still soft from sleep, but her eyes sharp. "Where do we go?" "There's a pass east of the river, narrow and steep. One way in, one way out." "You mean to face them there?" "I mean to finish this." She stepped closer, voice low. "And if you don't come back?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes flicked to the storm, then back to her. "Then you tell the town what really happened. Tell them the name Doyle still means courage. Tell them Cade Valley's finally quiet." She shook her head. "No, you don't get to decide that alone." Rowan's mouth twitched in something like a smile. "You always this stubborn?" "Only when I care," she said softly. That stopped him. For a heartbeat, the world went silent, except for the sound of the wind. Then he reached out, brushing his thumb along her jaw. "You care too much for a man with a bounty," he murmured. "Maybe I see something worth keeping," she said. He let out a slow, shaky breath. "Don't make me forget why I'm fighting June." Her voice trembled just enough to betray the truth. "Then win fast, so I don't have to remind you." They rode east under a sky that looked ready to split in half. The pass was a scar in the land, narrow walls of stone rising like teeth, a perfect trap. By the time they reached it, the wind had turned fierce. Dust whipped through the air, stinging their faces. Rowan dismounted and scanned the cliffs. "They'll come from the ridge above," he said. "I'll draw them down. You stay low by the rocks." She tightened her grip on the reins. "You keep telling me to hide. Maybe it's time you stop." "June, I'm not leaving you to fight your brother alone." He sighed, knowing he wouldn't change her mind. "Then stay close to my left, if it turns bad." "It already has," she said. Thunder cracked overhead. They barely had time to draw breath before the first shots rang out. Bullets spat from the ridge, kicking dust near their boots. Rowan dove for cover, returning fire clean and precise. The echoes slammed through the canyon, a violent rhythm that shook the stone. June crouched beside him, reloading his spare revolver with shaking hands. "How many?" "4 on the ridge," he said. "And Gabe." Lightning flashed, and in that split second she saw him, Gabe Cade, standing above, rifle aimed straight at them. Rowan shouted, shoving her down just as the shot hit the rock where her head had been. Stone splinters cut her cheek. He fired back, forcing Gabe to duck. "Stay down!" Rowan yelled. "Not a chance!" she snapped, firing at a shadow moving along the slope. The figure fell. She exhaled hard, adrenaline and fear tangled in her throat. Rowan glanced at her, eyes wide. "Your father teach you to shoot like that?" She smiled grimly. "No, life did." The gunfire slowed. Silence pressed in, broken only by the rumble of thunder. Then Gabe's voice echoed down from the ridge, rough and wild. "Come on out, brother. I'll make it quick." Rowan stepped from cover, revolver steady. "You always did love your theatrics. Still hiding behind someone else's mercy, huh?" Gabe called. "Let's end it proper." June grabbed Rowan's arm. "Don't go." He looked at her, and for a heartbeat his resolve cracked. "If I don't, he'll find you. I won't let him." "Then I'm coming with you." Her eyes left no room for argument. Together they climbed toward the ridge, the rain beginning to fall in thin silver lines. When they reached the top, Gabe stood waiting, gun drawn, lightning flashing behind him like fire from heaven. "So it's the outlaw and his pretty savior," Gabe sneered. "You always did need someone to clean up after you, Rowan." "Put the gun down," Rowan said. "Why? So you can give me another sermon." Gabe lifted the barrel. "You should have killed me when you had the chance." "I know," Rowan said quietly. "But I couldn't then. Maybe I still can't." The shot came before the words had finished leaving his mouth. But it wasn't from Gabe. It was from June. The bullet struck Gabe's hand, sending his gun spinning into the mud. He roared, clutching the wound. Rowan stared at her, stunned. "June." She didn't flinch. "You're not dying for mercy, Rowan. Not today." Gabe staggered back, face twisted with pain and disbelief. "You'd let her fight your battles now?" "No," Rowan said. "I'd let her end one." He stepped forward, standing over his brother, rain pouring down his face. "You can keep running, Gabe, or you can stop right here and make peace with what's left of you." Gabe met his eyes, breath ragged. "Peace ain't for men like us." Rowan nodded slowly. "Maybe not, but it's for her, and for the ones you'll never hurt again." He turned away, lowering his gun. Behind him, Gabe gave a broken laugh, a sound too tired to be cruel. Then he stumbled down the slope and disappeared into the rain. When it was over, June stood beside Rowan, chest heaving. The storm washed the blood from his sleeve, leaving only clean water and silence. She reached for him, her hand trembling. "It's done," she whispered. He looked at her, the lines of anger and grief finally easing from his face. "It's done," he echoed. "Because of you." She smiled faintly, tears mixing with the rain. "We both pulled the trigger, Rowan, just in different ways." He stared at her a long moment, then took her hand, pressing it against his chest where his heartbeat thudded strong and steady. "You saved what's left of me," he said. "Then let's see what that's worth," she whispered back. and together they stood as the storm passed over, lightning breaking into dawn, their hands still joined, two souls who had finally stopped running. If this storm has found a place in your heart, don't turn away yet. The rain has one more story to tell, of redemption, of home, and the fire that still burns after the thunder fades. When the storm cleared, the world felt hollow, like it had exhaled everything it had left. The air smelled of rain and gunpowder, and Cade Valley lay quiet under a pale gold sky. June sat by the dying fire near the mouth of the pass, wrapping a strip of cloth around Rowan's arm where a stray bullet had grazed him. Her fingers were gentle, but her jaw was set. "You should have told me you were hit," she said, voice low. He gave her that crooked half-smile, the one that never quite reached his eyes. "Didn't seem worth mentioning. You were busy saving my life." She tightened the knot just enough to make him wince. "Call that even then?" He chuckled softly, the sound rough but alive. "You're getting dangerous with mercy, June Doyle." She looked up at him. "And you're getting used to being forgiven." The teasing faded between them, leaving silence that hummed with something deeper. The rain had left his hair dark and his voice softer. She watched him as the firelight caught on his cheekbone, the faint tremor in his hand when he flexed his fingers. "How long has it been?" she asked quietly. "Since you stopped running." Rowan stared into the flames. "A long while, long enough to forget what it felt like to stop." "And now?" He met her eyes. "Now I remember what it costs." June leaned back, the blanket slipping off her shoulders. "Maybe peace always costs the people who deserve it least." He nodded. "That sounds like something your father would have said." She smiled, small and sad. "He used to tell me peace wasn't found, it was made, usually out of something broken." Rowan's gaze lingered on her face, his expression unreadable. He was right. "I just never thought I'd find the proof sitting across from me." June felt her pulse skip. The words hit low, steady, like a confession. "Careful," she whispered. "Sounds like you're starting to believe in something again." He tilted his head. "Maybe I am." They packed what little they had left and rode toward town as dawn turned to morning. The desert looked softer now, washed clean. Birds called from the cottonwoods. Somewhere behind them, Cade Valley steamed under the sun, smoke rising like memory. When they reached the ridge, they stopped to look back. "Think he'll stay gone?" June asked. Rowan shook his head. "Men like Gabe don't stay gone. They just circle wider before coming home to the same ghosts." She nodded, eyes on the valley. "Then we'll be ready." He turned toward her. "We? You think I'm letting you disappear again?" she said. "After all that?" He almost smiled. "You always this sure of yourself?" "Only when I'm right," she said. By the time they reached Dry Creek, the town was awake and wary. Faces peered from behind curtains, whispers following the rhythm of hooves on wet earth. Deputy Milo was the first to step forward, eyes wide. "June, Lord above, you're alive." "Mostly," she said, sliding down from her horse. Milo looked past her at Rowan. "You brought him back?" "Depends what you mean by back," Rowan said, dismounting. The deputy hesitated. "You know the council'll want words. They're still calling you wanted." Rowan nodded. "I figured." June stepped between them, voice firm. "He saved this town, Milo. Saved me. That's worth more than what's printed on some old warrant." Milo studied her, then Rowan. After a long pause, he nodded slowly. Guess I'll tell the mayor he's got a choice to make." As the deputy walked off, June turned to Rowan. "You don't have to stay." "I know. But you want to." He didn't answer right away. His hand brushed his coat pocket, where the worn badge Abram Doyle had once handed him still lay hidden, the one he'd found in the ashes of Cade Valley. Finally, he said, "Maybe the only way to pay a debt is to live long enough to make something of it." June's throat tightened. "Then make it here." That night, the saloon was quieter than usual. The piano stood silent, and lanterns burned low. June sat alone at a corner table, sipping whiskey slow. She turned when she heard boots approach. Rowan stood behind her, no hat this time, just that tired, familiar calm. "Town's talkin'," he said. "Let 'em," she replied. "They've been talking my whole life. Never changed much." He pulled out a chair, sat across from her. "You ever think about leaving, starting somewhere new?" "Sometimes," she said. "Then I remember that every horizon looks the same if you're still haunted." He nodded. "That's the truth." "Why?" "You planning to run again?" He looked down at the whiskey glass between them. "Not this time." Her heart skipped. "Then what?" He met her eyes, and there was no distance left in them. "Then I stay." June held his gaze, the silence wrapping around them like a promise. Outside, thunder rolled faintly. Not a storm, just the echo of one. She smiled. "Guess the desert finally gave something back." He leaned closer, his voice rough. "Maybe it never took it away. Maybe we just had to stop running long enough to see it." Her hand found his on the table. Steady, warm, real. And for the first time since she'd buried her father, June Doyle felt something she hadn't dared to feel in years. Home. If this quiet has settled somewhere inside you, stay a while. The story ain't done yet. The heart still has one more mile to ride before it rests. The following days passed slow, like the desert learning to breathe again. Dry Creek began to remember what peace felt like, though not everyone trusted it. The townsfolk whispered when Rowan Cade walked down Main Street. Some turned away, some nodded stiffly, but no one reached for a gun. Not anymore. June watched it all from her father's porch, arms folded, heart caught between pride and fear. She knew what it took for a man like Rowan to stand still in daylight. He'd spent a lifetime moving so the past couldn't find him. Now he was letting it catch up. That evening she found him behind the livery, mending the fence. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, forearms streaked with dust. The simple rhythm of his hammering matched the slow beat of her heart. "You keep doing honest work like that," she said, leaning against the post. "Folks'll start forgetting why they ever called you trouble." He looked over, a glint of humour in his eyes. "Maybe I'd rather they remember. A little fear keeps a man from being disappointed." She smiled faintly. "You don't scare me." "That's what worries me," he said. June walked closer. The air smelled of cedar and horse sweat, warm and alive. "You plan on staying behind this fence forever?" "Thinking on it," he said. "It's quiet here. Don't know if I ever earned quiet, but it's nice to borrow it a while." She studied him. "You don't owe this town peace, Rowan. You already gave it blood." He straightened, the hammer still in his hand. "I owe it to your father. He believed a man could come back from the dark, Never thought I'd get the chance to prove him right. June's voice softened. He'd say you already have. He turned, meeting her eyes. Would he say the same about you? Her breath caught. What do you mean? You've been carrying his name like it's armor, he said, but that ain't what he wanted for you. He wanted you to live, not just stand guard over ghosts. June looked away, the truth cutting deep. I don't know how to stop fighting what he left behind. Rowan stepped closer. Maybe you don't stop. Maybe you just start fighting for something else. She met his gaze again, and the space between them felt smaller than air. And what would that be? His voice dropped, rough and tender all at once. For something that's yours. For someone who ain't running anymore. She took a slow breath. You talk like a man inviting me into something dangerous. He smiled a little. Ain't that what you've been waiting for? Before she could answer, a shout broke across the street. Deputy Milo came running from the sheriff's office, breathless. June! Rowan! You better come quick! They followed him into the dusk, the last light spilling red across the town. At the end of Main Street, two riders approached, strangers, dust-caked and hard-eyed. The taller one carried a rifle slung low, the other a folded piece of paper. When they stopped, the man with the paper called out, We're looking for Rowan Cade. Rowan stepped forward, calm but alert. You found him. The man unfolded the paper. A bounty notice. By order of the state, you're wanted for the fire at Cade Valley and the deaths it caused. June's voice went sharp. That's a lie. He saved lives. The man ignored her. Law's got its version, miss. Ain't mine to question. We'll be taking him in. Rowan didn't move. And if I don't go quiet? The bounty hunter smirked. Then we'll make it loud. The air tightened. June stepped between them. You'll have to shoot through me first. June! Rowan's tone was firm but low. No, she said, eyes burning. I'm done losing people to the law's mistakes. The hunters hesitated, thrown off by the fierceness in her stance. Rowan touched her arm gently, his voice calm. Don't do this. You'll get yourself killed. You think I'll just stand here while they drag you away? He met her eyes, the storm rising again inside both of them. If I run now, it never ends. But if I face it, maybe it does. Tears glistened at the edge of her lashes. And if they hang you for something you didn't do? He smiled softly. A sad, tired kind of peace. Then at least I'll die standing in the open, not hiding in the dark. The bounty hunters moved forward. June's hands clenched, but Rowan caught them, his fingers warm around hers. June, he said quietly, don't remember me for how I fall. Remember me for the moment I finally stopped running. She shook her head, voice breaking. No. I won't let it end like this. Rowan leaned closer, his breath brushing her ear. Then trust me once more, the way your father did. He turned toward the men, shoulders squared, eyes steady. All right, he said. You want me alive? You got me. The bounty hunters bound his hands, but not his pride. He walked past June, brushing her shoulder lightly. Keep the fire lit, he whispered. If I don't come back, the story's still yours to finish. She stood, frozen, watching them ride into the dying light. The wind picked up, carrying dust down the empty street. Deputy Milo came to her side, voice trembling. June, what do we do? She wiped a tear and steadied her jaw. We ride at dawn. If this part left your heart on the edge, stay close to the flame. The next dawn will carry both judgment and mercy, and the kind of love that don't bow to either. The desert dawn broke pale and cold. June Doyle rode hard, dust flying from her mare's hooves as the horizon bled with light. The town of Dry Creek had shrunk behind her. Ahead lay the long road to Fort Brighton, where justice was too often a business, and mercy never made the books. She hadn't slept. She hadn't spoken. Every heartbeat since they took Rowan Cade had been a hammer driving her forward. By mid-morning the fort appeared, a block of timber and iron sitting on a rise above the river. The flag whipped hard in the wind. 2 guards watched her approach. "Business?" one called. "Sheriff's daughter from Dry Creek," she said, dismounting. "I'm here about the prisoner brought in last night. Rowan Cade." They traded looks. One of them nodded toward the main building. "You'll find him in the holding shed, but the marshal don't like visitors." "I ain't asking permission," she said, and walked past before either could stop her. Inside, the air smelled of iron, whiskey, and old sweat. A single lantern burned near the door of a small cell. Behind the bars, Rowan sat on the cot, head bowed, wrists still bound. His hat lay on the floor beside him. When he looked up, the faintest smile tugged at his mouth. "Didn't think you'd wait for the trial." "I'm not waiting for anything," she said. "You shouldn't be in here." "I've been in worse." "That's not the point." He tilted his head. "It's always the point with you. You carry the world like it owes you answers." She stepped closer, fingers gripping the bars. "Don't joke now, Rowan. They'll hang you for what your brother did." His eyes softened. "I told you once. Peace costs the people who deserve it least." "Then let me pay it too," she said. He shook his head. "You already did. You gave me a reason to stop running. That's more than any rope can take." Footsteps sounded outside. The marshal, heavy boots, slow and sure. June turned, heart pounding. The door swung open. Marshal Briggs stepped in, broad-shouldered and grey-bearded, his badge dulled with years of hard weather. "You're the Doyle girl," he said. "Heard you had a temper." June met his gaze. "Only when I see a man punished for another man's sins." Briggs gave a short laugh. "You're your father's child, all right." "But the papers don't lie, and I don't get paid to read hearts." She stepped forward. "Then read this instead." She pulled a folded page from her coat. The letter she'd found tucked in her father's journal. The ink was faded, but the words still clear. "To whoever holds this when I'm gone, Rowan Cade is not guilty for the fire at Cade Valley. I saw it with my own eyes. He tried to save them. The guilty man fled, and I let him go, because sometimes the law ain't what keeps a soul right." Sheriff Abram Doyle Briggs read it once. Then again. His jaw tightened. "You bringing this a bit late, miss?" "Late's better than wrong," she said, "and you've got the chance to fix it." The marshal stared at Rowan through the bars. The silence stretched long enough to hurt. Finally he said, "You've got a ghost of a case, but I ain't fond of ghosts." Rowan rose slowly. "You afraid of proving a good man right, Marshal?" Briggs sighed. "I'm afraid of proving myself wrong." Then he unlocked the cell door. June exhaled shakily, her knees almost giving. Rowan stepped out, the chains falling heavy to the floor. "Don't make me regret this," Briggs muttered. "You won't," Rowan said. "I'm done riding toward the past." They rode out of Fort Brighton, under a sky as clear as glass. The sun climbed high, and the road home shimmered ahead. For the first time, Rowan didn't look over his shoulder. June rode beside him in silence for a long while, until she said softly, "You could have left this place behind, started somewhere new." He turned to her. Everywhere else was just dirt with a different name. Here's where it started. Seems right it should end here too. And after? He smiled faintly. After? Maybe I help build what your father started. A town that remembers mercy. June's eyes filled with tears she didn't bother to hide. He'd be proud. Rowan reached over, his hand covering hers on the reins. "He'd be proud of you." She looked up, sunlight breaking over her face, and the world seemed quiet again. Not empty this time, but full. They rode into Dry Creek at dusk. The town watched, half afraid, half awed. The outlaw had come home, not in chains, but in light. As they passed the church, June stopped her horse. "My father used to say the desert keeps secrets till it's ready to forgive them." Rowan looked toward the setting sun. Then maybe tonight it did. He turned to her, eyes warm, voice low. "You keep the fire lit, June Doyle. I'll keep the road clear." She smiled. "Deal." And as the last light fell across the valley, they rode on together. Two names once bound by loss, now by something stronger. Something earned. If this story has touched a tender place in your heart, let your light stay with us. Comment, share, and subscribe so this Western fire keeps burning for you.